Hey everyone, it's Jonathan from Awareness Ascending. Just wanted to let you know we have a private members network at awarenessascending.com. If you sign up and become a member with us, you get live stream access. So what that allows you to do is to ask questions directly to the hosts, get readings, get healings, get live channel direct messages for your questions, information that you want, and just be part of our conversation as it develops. So head on over. We have a 7-day free trial at awarenessascending.com and enjoy the show.
Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Yeah.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on board. I really enjoyed your talk on binaural beats research in the Science of Consciousness conference in Tucson a couple of weeks back. So I'm happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Very good. So let's see, I often start with the fact that I was born half deaf.
Yeah, and you're a musician, a top-notch musician, right?
Yeah, so it was really, it was a big challenge to get into the things that I wanted to do, which started with singing and songwriting. And there was a wonderful shaman that told me, well, you know, if you were in a tribal community, they would say that that problem that you have indicates that you're marked for a life of studying and being with sound. And I said, hey, that's cool. So you're saying it's not in the way, it is the way. And I said, so, okay, that's the way, show me the way.
Right.
So, you know, I guess about 35 years of studying, following that golden thread of sound. You know, I started a business in 2015 called Sound Medicine. And it's really under the umbrella of sound healing and consciousness, my work. And I was seeing clients using my certifications in sound therapy and intuition medicine and heart math, which is a biofeedback technology, and also my shamanic studies. And then I went to get the PhD to study the actual science behind why one of the modalities that I was using in my practice, binaural beats, was so effective. And I've really been on that ride since about 2015. It is one of the treatments that I use in my healing sessions, and it's now also the music that I make to bring everything full circle.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, so tell us, I'm going to invite you to do a little presentation on your research and the background of binaural beats, so you can take that away.
Sure. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see, share screen. Desktop. Great. So this is actually the title of the dissertation, The Effects of Auditory Binaural Beats on Consciousness and the Human Nervous System. And it was a transdisciplinary review. And this is the company that I started that I was telling you about, Sound-Medicine.
Okay, that's your website, yeah.
My website. Anybody can come to this website, and you can email me from the website. You can grab a free binaural beats track off the homepage, or you can sign up for the newsletter and get a second free track. I'll have a full catalog of binaural beats tracks available in September, and I also have another album coming out June 1st, which I'm excited about. So this is also a good time to mention, as I'm about to get into my research, what we call conflict of interest in the scientific community. I do use binaural beats in my treatments, and I do make binaural beats. But as I said, I found them so effective, I really wanted to study them and find out what they were all about. So I did also address that issue in my own pilot study that I carried out in the lab by making it double blind in addition to controlled, so that I would have no influence on the outcome of the experiment. So it's been a really fun ride that I'd like to take you through and show you what I've learned. What I did in my dissertation was an overview of the field, which was really necessary, Sanjay, because we didn't really know what was out there. You know, what was hypothesis, what was already evidence, what were the parameters, who has done what even are we measuring, and with what? None of that was really anywhere in one place. There was a good study out of Stanford in 2011 that mentioned it. There was one meta-analysis in 2019, the Garcia-Argabe study. And then there were a lot of peer-reviewed clinical studies, to my surprise, quite a number. So I went through and looked at those. So that's the bulk of this presentation, looking at what the field is, what this technology actually is. I talk a little bit about my study, define a lot of terms, and then we'll wrap it up at the end with a summary.
Okay.
We can discuss. So there's really 3 parts here. We'll do a little introduction. I'll talk about the methodology very briefly, and then pull up the conclusions and pilot study for you. So why, who, what, where, when, why, and definitions is going to be the first part to get us all on the same page. Now, what was really interesting as I was putting this presentation together for Tucson was this article that came out in the press talking about binaural beats as the newest psychedelic drug. And the new generation seems to think of experiences as drugs as much as they do think of a pill as a drug or anything like that. You know, it's like we seem to have redefined what a drug is. This particular survey sent to 30,000 people in 22 countries, including the US, showed that 72% of respondents are using binaural beats to help relax or fall asleep. That's one of their main uses. 35% are trying to change their mood, and a full 12% say they're using them to create the same high they get from taking a psychedelic drug, which is really interesting. And a full 16% of respondents from the US say they've tried it. That's pretty high. You know, you might expect that it would be like 2% or something, but a lot of people do know about binaural beats. And I like to point out that if you looked on YouTube, if you Googled YouTube binaural beats, you'd see about 40 million hits.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it included binaural beats questions in the global drug survey. Like you said, they're rethinking about what a drug is here.
Another excellent point from Sanjay. We're going to expect a couple of them from you at least during this talk. So in my study, I wanted to provide an overview, talked about that a little bit. I wanted to summarize the progress of binaural beat studies and really consolidate that into the 3 fields that are most studying them, which are health, neuroscience, and psychology. And those are very different clinical studies, actually. And I want to review 26 of them for the 18 experimental conditions that I identified as being maybe the most significant, and then talk about some recommendations for the future. So I just want to stop right there and define binaural beats. A lot of people say to me, but like, what are they? I get it's a brain hack and it's a biohack, but what is it? So binaural beats are sound. They're a sound wave. Sound is a pressure wave. So we're using air waves, pressure waves of air to give the body information to try to get the body to do something. Binaural beats were really summarized and substantiated for the first time about 50 years ago by the physicist, Dr. Gerald Oster. And he defined them as a difference tone created by 2 slightly different pitches. What does that mean? So if we take a carrier frequency, so we're going to use this frequency to carry a binaural beat of say 440 hertz and split it by 8 hertz and put say 440 hertz in one ear and 448 hertz in the other ear, we've now sent 2 different tones, one to your left ear and one to your right ear. We've created a tone difference. Now, that difference only exists in your brain. It doesn't exist out here because you've sent it in through the headphones. Your brain has to reconcile this 8 hertz difference. That's the binaural beat. And what we are investigating here is whether that 8 hertz difference can create an 8 hertz brainwave pattern in your brain. That's the investigation. And you can choose any hertz. You know, we'll talk a little bit about why you would choose which number and what for. The other thing I do want to say right up front is that binaural hearing is a natural capacity of the auditory brain. Binaural hearing is the neural pathway for hearing that we use whenever anything is not dead center in front of us, whenever anything is to the left or to the right, and we have to locate it, we use binaural hearing. So binaural beats is taking a pre-existing function of the brain and kind of manufacturing it and lengthening it, right? Like a hummingbird would be a very brief binaural beating through which we would locate its existence, location, understand whether it was threatening, whether we could eat it, whether it could eat us, what is it? And then we elongate that and start to watch what happens to our brainwave patterns. And again, Dr. Oster did notice that the electrical brainwave patterns responded to these frequencies.
So the binaural circuit is used, like the difference in frequency and pitch as the bird flies across the head is used to locate the bird in the binaural circuits.
That's correct. It's a fundamental survival skill.
Okay.
Identify predators, locate prey, stay safe. Can binaural beats, audio, do the following things? These are a lot of the claims that you'll see. I, looked at all the various products that were out there and said, well, what are they claiming? Can they affect our brain states, our autonomic nervous system, our well-being, enhance our conscious awareness, so change our states of consciousness, and synchronize our brain hemispheres? Those were the main questions I wanted to look at. So we had to really focus on 2 different measurements. Can we predict their effects on our neural brain rhythms, our brain waves? Everybody knows the basic brain waves, it seems these days, right? Because that's the hot topic.
Sure.
How do we change our brain waves? With everything, light, sound, yoga, breathing, psychedelics, all these ways that we can change our brain waves. Right now, we're investigating, can sound do that? And can binaural beats do that? And then we also looked at, well, can it affect the autonomic nervous system of the human being? Who studied that and what results did they get? Right, because we don't really have an accepted mainstream measurement for subtle energy, right? But what we can do is measure the nervous system. So our nervous system is the most complex instrument we know of. And so if we measure our response to something through measuring our nervous system, that's about as much as we're going to know it for now. The main way to measure that is with EEG. That tracks the electrical activity in the scalp, can tell us what is being affected, how much. Functional connectivity is another way to track this activity. It's the activity between regions. And then multi-layer perceptron networks, some of the studies use that. That's a pretty cool thing, Sanjay. That's introducing artificial intelligence into interpreting EEG readings. So the hope there is, wow, we can get more sophisticated with how we understand these electrical signals in our brain that we're tracking. to study the autonomic nervous system. Heart rate variability is used often. HeartMath uses that technology. That's really studying your cardiovascular system, your heart rate, or actually HRV is measuring the space in between your heartbeats. Galvanic skin response, measuring moisture response. And then we have some semi-quantitative or qualitative ways of studying. I think a strong experiment combines both of them to see if they correlate. When you get correlations, I think that's the strongest information. So you can take questionnaires, you can have your subjects run tests, like see if you can connect the dots with your eyes, then listen to the binaural beats, then go back and do the same test. Did anything change? And of course, self-reporting. So Sanjay, I see a hand up. Do you usually take questions?
Yeah, you can say, Jess, you have a question?
Yes.
I do. If you go, for Elizabeth, if you go back 2 slides, sorry.
Sure.
Good. There was one about measuring response through the nervous system, measuring response in the nervous system. I was curious if, as part of this tool, and research, from what I'm hearing you talk about, have they included breath work, like the measurement within even the lungs, as the nervous system is starting to be toned, if it has a greater capacity for the lungs to fill and whatnot?
Not in a binaural beat study that I'm aware of. Although if you're familiar with HeartMath, that's a significant portion of the work that a HeartMath practitioner will do with their clients, as being, the first tool really to learn to work with and make a relationship with your autonomic nervous system. So the relationship is well known and well studied, but I have not seen it used as a diagnostic in a binaural beats assessment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Good
Thanks
question, Jess. Yeah, normally, sometimes the breathing rate is measured, but typically the breathing volume is pretty hard to measure. That's probably one reason, but it's a good thought, actually. It's not usually measured in these studies. Yeah.
And I did mention it is one of the ways that we can alter our states of consciousness with our breathing. One of the most fundamental ways, right?
Yep.
So this slide is just reviewing, well, what are the basic brain waves that we are looking to see if we can replicate, and their correlative cognitive states. And these are the same brain waves that all of the fields of studying consciousness research are using. And I liken them to a car, like an automatic transmission. The delta is your slowest gear 1, right? That's when you're sleeping and your brain waves are at 0.5 to 4 hertz. Now, if you think about it, hertz is the number of cycles per second. So in 1 second, you'll see that many cycles. Think about your heart rate, 60 beats per minute, that's 1 cycle per second, right? That's sort of the resting rate of the human being. So that's about the brainwave when you're sleeping. And then theta starts to move up a little bit, alpha move up a little bit more. Those are sort of your meditative brainwaves. And then into beta, now you're getting into focused. Our everyday awareness state is beta. It tends to be where the dominant brainwave, where we're focusing and producing, learning. And I want to point out that I always do on the slide, we have all these brainwaves in our brain all the time. All of the different cavities in the brain resonate and make waves. There's so much going on there. What I'm talking about is measuring a predominant brainwave, what we see the most of during a particular state or function. And then again, just to finish off, gamma being the fastest, where we're in a state of concentration, a state of epiphany, a state of very high focus. So let's look and see how that's going to relate. Overall, in the field of sound healing, which is ancient, as we all know, repetitive rhythms have been used as a healing modality. We have a number of really good clinical studies backing up that research, one of which it was the presenter before me at Tucson. There's some very recent work on shamanic drumming and trance and brainwaves. So there's quite a lot we do know about that, and that falls under the category of entrainment. Which is the next point. So we have quite a bit of research showing that sound and rhythm can entrain the brain, which is very easy to imagine. If you're at a dance club and you're across from your partner and both of you start dancing to the beat and you both start dancing kind of like each other, that's a simple explanation. That's entrainment. Now, what are binaural beats? So first discovered in 1839 and then taken up again in 1973 with Dr. Oster. They do not seem to be entrainment. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what they are. So this slide is the auditory pathways of how sound travels through the brain. Basic sound comes in your ear and goes through 4 energy transductions. It's the most remarkable system, the way that we're made. We're kind of a miracle. You start with airwaves, and then it comes in through your outer ear. And by the way, we don't hear through this ear. We hear up in our brain, where you see the red dots on the slide. The auditory cortex, that's where we actually hear, right? So the airwaves come in through the outer ear into the inner ear. Then there's knocking, like a Morse code. That's a mechanical wave energy. That's the second form. Then it goes into the cochlea, into the water, which is where our hearing probably first developed, according to some neuroscientists. Which is also where sound waves travel the best, in the water. And then you see that little snail there, it goes to the blue dot in the brainstem. Then it becomes electrical energy. Now it's your neurons firing, neural energy, a neural pathway through the brain. So you've taken airwaves and turned them into electricity and delivered electricity to the brain. Phenomenal. So if you follow the colored dots, the cochlear nucleus is the blue dots. The green, the superior olivary nuclei, that's as far as we can track how binaural beats are heard. We've tracked them again in the red area at the auditory cortex, but between the olivary nuclei and the auditory cortex, we don't know the pathway yet. That is still to come. But regular sound will continue up the brain stem into the inferior colliculus there, into the midbrain, the medial geniculate nucleus, that's the yellow dots. These are a lot of big fancy names, but basically it's going up the brain stem. It's going to have a relationship there to the hypothalamus, which is right above there. You can see kind of black and tan. And the hypothalamus will speak to the autonomic nervous system. And then, so there's other signals, there's many pathway signals, but basically the main auditory signal will go right out to the auditory cortex. Now, we don't know, as I said, how binaural beats are actually heard. How are they manipulating our states of consciousness? It's a pretty fascinating question. We just came from the consciousness conference. There's a lot of really groundbreaking work being done right now. But this conversation specifically looks at the reticular activating system, which is a non-primary auditory pathway. So there's a second auditory pathway where sound goes in to this neural network there in the midbrain, the RAS. And that's where the brain processes all the sensory information, both internal stimuli and external stimuli. It's kind of like the medics who decide what is the most important piece of information to respond to in what order. How do we save this life? You know, so and it's considered the gateway to consciousness in this field of neuroscience. it regulates our three basic states of consciousness, which are deep sleep, that's the low one, slow wave sleep and resting, the mid one, and wake. Those are our three sleep arousal states. So they define consciousness as slowly coming into arousal and then descending out of arousal. And we hypothesize in this field that auditory data from the binaural beats are going into the secondary pathway and speaking to this system that is regulating our states of consciousness. Now, we can't prove that at all, but what's interesting is to look at what is actually affected by the binaural beats and what systems does that relate back to, if you're following me. So for example, if you look to the left of the slide, the hypothalamus is regulating that list. And these are, so I want to say the nervous system is a rhythm. Everything in your body is a rhythm. That's why sound is an effective therapy. It's why sound is an effective everything. It's built by the same principles of physics that your human body is built with. Your nervous system is a rhythm. Your heart cells are the primary rhythm in your body, your heartbeat, and they beat together by a principle called coupled oscillation. Each nerve cell couples to the nerve cell next to it and beats in time. That's your heartbeat. If those cells decouple, you die. Right? You have a primary rhythm that keeps you alive. So your nervous system is a rhythm, your cardiovascular system is a rhythm, your endocrine system is a rhythm. And all of these things can be looked at and worked with rhythmically. So here's a list of, look at all these rhythms: endocrine system, your metabolic rhythms, your circadian rhythms, your sleep rhythms. And then the hypothalamus speaks over here to the ANS. And look at that series of rhythms, right? So what we're going to look at later is to see, hey, do binaural beats affect any of these rhythms? Are we seeing changes in any of them? And if so, well, then maybe we can say that the RAS is involved here. I just want to refer back quickly. Look at the correspondence here between the RAS sleep arousal states and the brain waves. I don't know, that evidence to me suggests that we should make some inquiry here as to the relationship between the RAS and the various states of arousal in that we're measuring through brain waves. Sanjay, I just want to check with you about time. Should I just keep going a little more? Do you want to stop and ask questions? Does anybody have any questions?
Just speed up a little bit so you can skip this slide, I think.
Okay. So we're in the field of sound healing, which is the educated and conscious use of the energy of sound to reach these following goals. Sound healing operates on these two basic principles: entrainment and resonance.
So here's a question for you. So does binaural beat work more on entrainment or resonance?
Mm-hmm. Nobody can find any evidence of entrainment. The signal is not strong enough.
Okay, so for example, when you have rhythmic drumming, there's entrainment, but this is different. It's a different mechanism.
That's
than
correct.
Rhythmic drumming.
So we think it's more resonance. We think it's more resonance. We think the binaural beats are resonating and amplifying existing waves. That's the suggestion. No evidence.
Okay.
The description, the constant description in all these studies of what binaural beats does and how they operate, and even the evidence in studies that's protocol is necessary to achieve results, all of that would suggest resonance. That's the strong suggestion.
Right. So the resonance is does that show up in the EEG amplitude that's recorded?
Well, something shows up. So when you do, it's studied with frequency following response. When you do the FR, you see a consistent tracking of the brainwave patterns that are being generated. You can see it. That was in Dr. Oster's report in Scientific American. But that's all.
But it's not clear how that's being
unclear.
Okay.
RAS is the dominant theory.
So is it true that if you stimulate the brain at say 10 hertz, you're using 10 hertz difference in the binaural beats, so the beat frequency is 10 hertz, you will see more 10 hertz power in the brain waves always, or not necessarily?
Many studies are showing that.
That you will see more 10 hertz power.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
So again, this is the suggestion. Perhaps it's a stochastic resonance phenomenon. Then I just wanted to say my review was a transdisciplinary review, which integrated all of these fields in order to understand what is important to study quantitatively. And the studies had to be recent, they had to be peer-reviewed, they had to have at least 12 of the data points. These are the 26 studies that I used in the fields of neuroscience, psychology, and health.
Keep going.
And there's many more. Right now there's another 15 studies since I've done this.
Okay.
I ran them all through these various questions, looked at all the patterns, looked at what made a good study. And we've got a question from Jess. Go ahead.
Do any of these studies that you're looking at include individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing? Just curious.
Usually you cannot have a deaf person in a hearing study. So mostly people will be selected for having good hearing. I am hearing impaired, and I have a great experience with binaural beats, but when I ask audiologists, hey, can someone who has no hearing in one ear use binaural beats? They say no, because you need to be able to hear the two different frequencies. But lowered hearing, fine. In my pilot study, my binaural beats are inaudible, and I got results. And that was also Dr. Oster's finding. You could take, there's actually 2 studies that showed that if you take one of the frequencies below audible level, you still get the same results.
Yeah.
Can
So
I have a follow-up?
Okay, Jess.
I'm just curious because there's so many different types of hearing loss too, and technology has improved. So I feel like there are some factors that as part of that conversation, maybe with the audiologist, they didn't necessarily include, because pontos, which do the bone anchored vibration, it's a whole other different way of kind of bypassing it to activate that middle ear. But this is a really cool topic. Sorry, just wanted to say thank you.
I love your enthusiasm and your questions, and it's a study waiting to happen. Truly, we do not know. And so those would be many of the interesting questions to formulate. And to be honest with you, I think that the studies that don't work give as much information as the studies that work. The people that have hearing that is not taking the normal route can give very valuable information from that perspective of, okay, this doesn't go exactly the same as everyone else. That's going to teach us something new. So a lot of neuroscientists like to study the people that are different. It gives them more information, right? So thank you. Thanks. Another great question. I just wanted to briefly show here, there's a few highlights that I can show you of how these studies were compared. You could look at the brain states, the duration, the study finding, type of headphone used, relaxation protocol used. A lot of people that studied binaural beats were not in the field of sound. So maybe they didn't even report the headphones or the loudness, the volume of exposure. The field needs to come together with a set of agreed upon criteria to really understand how to get the best effects, and then how to continually repeat the experiments to the point where you can satisfy yourself that you have some proof. 20 of these studies did have positive effects. We'll talk about that again later. And 6 did not. They showed some or no effect, right? And a lot of that, this is what I call learning. We're learning what it can and cannot do. This is an example of a study. So this study author studied 3 hertz. So I'm starting at the top left and moving across the right. And that's a delta frequency. The carrier frequency they used was 250 hertz. So perhaps they did like 250 in one ear and 253 in the other ear. They did it one time for 5 hours. Now that's just a sleep study. Most people did not go for that long. Then there's the the number of people in the study, 24, gender, age. So all of these things are important because every auditory brain is different, right? So you are not going to get the same response across any group of people. And you also have to understand that binaural beats affect women differently than they affect men. They have inter-individual differences as well. So all of these categories become important. I like to point out the last one where there's mixed quantitative and qualitative assessments. This was a very strong study. Most people are studying theta these days. That's kind of the popular brainwave. Very few people are studying multi-layered brainwaves, which is really where we need to be studying because that more closely replicates what's happening in our brain with all the different frequencies. Like when you have predominant frequencies, there's usually a couple that are predominant. That we find largely from research on meditation in other fields, sleep research. So we need to step up our game in the binaural beats field. One other thing I wanted to point out was that research shows you need 8 to 10 minutes to achieve effects. And most of these studies are under that time amount. So I think we want to look at that when we say we didn't get any results. Well, maybe you didn't run the binaural beats long enough. And definitely if we're going to be comparing studies with each other, we all need to be doing the same amount of time. See here, only a third of the people used relaxation protocol, and several key studies identified that without relaxation protocol, you're really not going to get the effects that you want. So, brief conclusion here. Why are there no results? Do the claims have any basis? Some themes. I'll briefly mention my pilot study. So these 6 studies, some of them were under the 10-minute mark. Some of them used everybody in the same demographic, like it was all 50-year-old women who, for women, the endocrine system has a relationship to binaural beats, Dr. Oster found out. If you're in a certain point in your cycle, you're going to have a different response to binaural beats than in another point. And if you're in menopause, you're going to respond totally differently once your endocrine system isn't moving that way. So he actually saw binaural beats as a diagnostic, not a therapeutic tool for studying some of these rhythms, like endocrine rhythms. There was another study, for example, that used theta to help with focus. Well, theta is more for relaxation and meditation. So that was an important study, which validated that theta is a good meditation frequency, but not a good frequency for focus. So I think it's helpful to be discriminating when you look at why a study doesn't work. Maybe it just gave you a really helpful piece of information. So we did find evidence that binaural beats affect our brain states and autonomic nervous system in 20 studies. And several of them specifically showed that binaural beats enhance our conscious awareness and meditation. And several showed that they synchronize our brain hemispheres. Those ones used functional connectivity to identify that. And then I collated the areas of effects on our neural rhythms. So you can see we are getting effects in sleep, in anxiety, in stress, brain function, attention, cognition, memory, trance meditation, and they even work nicely as an analgesic. That's something you can measure, how much pain medication a client is going to need. And you have a very easy control group there, those that get the binaural beats and those that don't. And the findings were that you need less pain medication if you're using binaural beats pre-dentistry, for example.
So I have a question there. So a bunch of the studies, they did not use an extra protocol like a relaxation or a meditation protocol, and a bunch of others they did. And in the ones they did they use that as a control as well? So, we want to distinguish binaural beats plus relaxation with relaxation alone, right?
Well, I wish everybody had been that clever. Very few people made that distinction. There's really one study. I write it down here. I always have a note of that study. Actually, I have it right here in front of me. It was 109 subjects, and it was out of Hungary. It was a study out of Hungary, and it found that alpha theta binaural beats are capable of inducing a trance state of consciousness, but that subjective experiences are mainly influenced by preliminary instructions, which is also what Monroe found at the Monroe Institute. They used binaural beats as part of their preparation for deep meditation and even astral travel. So this is the study that controls for relaxation protocol, and based on this information recommended that it should be used. They were not able to get the same results without the relaxation script.
Right,
So,
but did they compare the relaxation script by itself with the binaural beat plus relaxation script?
you know what? I don't think so. And that is another experiment waiting to happen. If I understand you, what you're saying is, can we have one control group with just the script and one control group with the script?
Well, that I think would just pretty elementary, right? Otherwise, we're not sure that the binaural beats are doing anything independent of the script.
Or maybe they did, I would have to go back and look at the study.
Probably some of them did. So we can go back and take a look at
I remember I did make a note that it controlled for a relaxation protocol, so it's highly possible they
probably
do have that control group.
Yeah.
But that's very important. You have to, if you're not with the control group, if you're not with a double blind, it's very difficult to take the
yeah. So I'm sure it is, yeah.
So we can look at different things here. We can look at integration of brain hemispheres with this technology. We can look at the field effect of brain waves, and we can look at resonance technologies here using binaural beats. Those can be incorporated into any of those inquiries. I myself did a pilot study with 4 subjects, and I had 4 conditions. And again, it was double blind. The tracks were designed outside of the lab and just labeled with numbers and sent to the lab. Nobody knew which number stood for what. And my control condition was the brown noise by itself. And then I had 2 control conditions. My baseline control condition was brown noise. Then my next condition was brown noise plus binaural beats. My third control condition was a musical track with brown noise. And then my fourth condition was that same musical track with brown noise and binaural beats. So we could see what each of those conditions did.
And no relaxation protocol, right?
All 4 had a relaxation protocol.
Okay.
The exact same protocol recorded in my voice and played to every single person.
Okay.
And I did have the times the same for everybody to control for circadian rhythms.
Okay.
And so I measured, actually I did measure the bioenergy with the GDV, gas discharge visualization. That's basically Kirlian photography. I did the basic EEG mapping, the 19 points. The Menla scan gave us cardiovascular information, autonomic nervous system, microcirculation, and then we did a character assessment and a self-assessment. And then just one slide here, the brown noise by itself shows a somewhat agitated brain. This is a scalp topography map. You're looking down on the top of the scalp. And then session 2 is when we added brown noise to the binaural beats. So the brain calmed right down. That's day 1. This subject came back on day 2. Just music and brown noise See, it got the scalp nice and calm. We interpret that yellow and green activity as some emotional activation from listening to the music. And then session 4, we added the binaural beats. And as you can see, the brain became completely calm.
This is across a wide band of frequencies. These maps are from like a wideband frequency power.
It was just the 4 basic frequencies. I don't think we studied.
So is it a summation or is it one particular band?
This band is, I think we brought in the alpha theta. This is looking at the alpha theta.
Alpha theta, okay.
The binaural beats track that we were measuring was an alpha theta blend. All 4 subjects did experience the improvement in brain function, the calmer brain. Most showed improvement in microcirculation, probably due to relaxation. All of them showed increase in bioenergy. It does seem to have a profound effect on bioenergy. Because the binaural beats were inaudible, they cannot be attributed to placebo. And our summary was that the results are encouraging in terms of developing musical products that could affect our neural rhythms and corollary states. Warrants further research with more subjects and different frequencies of binaural beats and different music tracks. So, quick wrap up. Binaural beats, the difference in 2 frequencies seem to resonate specific frequencies in the brain. Neural consciousness is a rhythmic state, and informed selection and proper application of these frequencies seems to induce effects, including correlative states of consciousness. If you would like to try binaural beats track, you can get them free, sound-medicine.com. If you sign up for the newsletter, get a second one. That one is called Waves for Creativity for the state before active doing. And these are all the references.
Okay. Well, thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Yeah, so a couple of points. One is that, in the past year, I've talked about resonance in using the electrical frequencies in the system of frequency-specific microcurrent, where we take sound frequencies like 40 hertz, 100 hertz, 120 hertz, and we put them into the body through electrodes, and at a very low power, and and sometimes not on the brain at all. So it's not entraining the brain, and get very powerful physiological effects: reduction in inflammation, reduction in pain, dramatic effects. And so really the best explanation, even there without real proof at the moment, seems to be resonance. That since our whole body is actually an electrical system, but one way to think about it is that chemistry itself is really an electrical system. Chemistry is like a high-level shorthand for electricity, because what is a chemical reaction when sodium and chloride come together to form salt? It's an electrical change. There's an attraction, and then certain electrons are exchanged, and that atoms create a molecule, which are held together by electrical forces. So electrical bonds are sensitive to vibration, and they can break at the right resonant frequency. And so we have, if we start to understand the whole body is, a whole series of complex nested rhythms and electrical bonds, which can be affected through resonance, which are stable, which are not so rhythmic, but can be affected through resonance, we get a very different view of the body, not just like it's constantly vibrating, which it is, as well as when it's stable, it's still affected by vibration because of the breaking. Bonds can break simply through resonance. And, for example, Anthony Holland has a video on YouTube where he demonstrates, destroying cancer cells under the microscope with, 2 frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies, certain frequency and its 11th harmonic being played simultaneously. And it's frequency specific. Those frequencies worked for specific cancer cells and not others, probably because resonance is a very specific, frequency specific phenomena. You have to have the right frequency. You have to sing at the right frequency to break the glass, and go
A really great example of that I love to give to people is the opera singer.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
You dissolve the resonance. I thought you gave a great explanation. Actually, you said it about as good as I've ever heard anyone said it. The resonance breaks the electrical bonds,
Right.
and those molecules return back to their original state.
Yeah. So then, then we have to study what certain frequencies do. And one of the open questions for me is how to compare, say, electrical stimulation with sound frequencies, as opposed to playing the sound to the ear and the body directly. So you have the pressure wave of sound impacting the skin versus you have a current being applied to the skin through a pad or a wet cloth. What's the difference? I mean, clearly it all converts to electrical activity in the brain, as well as there can be some effects which are acousto, pressure effects directly on the skin, which would be worth looking into. Is there some electricity being created right through the skin when you have sound waves? Not for hearing purposes, but for other physiological, changes.
My vibroacoustic bed it works because we have nerve cells called mechanoreceptors that are responding to that type of pressure sensation.
Yeah. All right. So we have mechanoreceptors, what you're saying, and they will send electricity in nerves back to the brain and to the brainstem.
One thing that's really interesting is that oh gosh, now I totally lost my train of thought. There was about 4 really interesting things I wanted to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. One point is that binaural beats are very effective synergistically. They work together. By the way, probably all of these methods do. So what I would be very interested to see is some manner of control groupings with binaural beats alone, skin stimulation alone, and binaural beats and skin stimulation together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be very powerful. So for example, the 40 hertz research done at MIT where they had light shining at 40 hertz in the mouse brain's eyes that reduced Alzheimer's plaque for Alzheimer bred mice. So you shine a light at 40 hertz, and 40 hertz is the only frequency that really works. Or you play 40 hertz tones in the ears, and it reduces plaque in the visual cortex and the auditory cortex, the two cortices that are affected. The sound affects the auditory, and the visual cortex affected by the flashing light, both at 40 hertz. And so the effects are not just EEG effects, they're physiological effects. And so I think the point is, what if you were to do electrical stimulation along with, light and sound, and I think it's a fast, or even had binaural beats instead of direct tones, which is what they were using.
Yeah, electrical and binaural together.
Yeah,
which is really saying electrical and electrical.
Well, yes and no, right? Because you're right. Ultimately, yeah.
But I mean, remember Emma, who presented before me? So when she works in the lab, they have to turn off different parts of their mouse brains so that they can study the effects of different things. And you know how they do that? They use like monkfish poison. There's a fish that creates this toxin. So they inject the brains of the mice with this neurotoxin that turns them off. Well, what does the neurotoxin do? It blocks the absorption of sodium.
Right.
Boom. Electricity turned off.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's all like I'm saying. Ultimately, the whole system is electrical. Even the chemistry is an electrical phenomena. So
you get there.
But still, the mode of delivery from a practical perspective, which is the best way to deliver it, or what is the combination like? One of the projects that I've been wanting to do, but haven't made the time or raised the money is to, not only use a sound bed or a sound platform for people, but then combine that with some electromagnetic stimulation directly, as well as infrared light, pulsed infrared light stimulation, so that you can take the major notes in the sound that you're playing or that you want to affect, and then pulse the infrared light directly on the body and the eyes. And it remains to be seen what kind of place that transports to.
Well, the Navy SEALs in the book Stealing Fire, Stephen Cutler somehow gets an interview with the Navy SEALs. They have pods that they put their soldiers in. I don't know what synergistic combination they're using, but it takes a 6-month process of learning a language and turns it into 2 weeks. So that's happening already in the military. In Silicon Valley, they have brain gyms. Google has a brain gym. The Burning Man crowd has, their methods. Many entrepreneurs.
No, I'm talking about a Burning Man project, but this project particular is not quite been done yet. So I think it's an interesting.
But it's where we are, Sanjay. That's where we are, putting together synergistic combinations. And what would you measure, though? What would you measure? Would you measure the ability? So measuring the ability to memorize or learn a paragraph in another language, that would be something you could measure.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but that would depend a lot on what is the stimulation
40 hertz.
doing. Yeah.
If you did that synergistic treatment with 40 hertz, measure, how quickly someone can memorize a paragraph in a new language.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, I'm open to whatever. It depends on what is the frequencies we're using.
Yeah.
There is the art project which just does it with music without deciding, a specific goal. And then there's the science project where we'll focus on a particular frequency set and a particular focused goal. So there's different, do you want to make it about meditation or cognitive learning, or just as an art project to come and experience music frequencies in a totally new way?
What would you like to do? If I just said, here's your funding.
All of it. That's simple.
Serious. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
What are we studying?
All of it is what I'm saying. All of it. Yeah. So the art is art and science is science, and there's an intersection. You want to do both.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to a sound healing a couple of days back, and it was very powerful. My brother was there. He doesn't usually go to these things, and he was like, "Oh, this was such a great experience. I was back in my childhood home, and I was experiencing everything like as fresh." He went on a journey from the sound healing.
It came into my mind, Pythagoras. We all know, as a mathematician, Pythagoras' theorem. We all learned his theorems in school. But 2,000 years ago, he was the one that realized, I'm talking about the art science connection now. He was the one that realized that you could measure the universe in ratios, like the ratios between the notes on a piano or on an instrument. Those same ratios exist in the physics of our construction. Sure. And so, we've known for some time that is an arbitrary separation, art and science.
Absolutely. Jess, you have a question?
I just want to chime in because I absolutely agree with the importance of the Fibonacci sequence. In my own kind of like development of sound healing, and actually a lot of what I've learned from you, Sanjay, and some of your workshops too, it's been helping me figure out how to do a meditation with the breathing techniques, but with my Fibonacci sequence tuning fork.
And tell me about that.
Like there's different spots where the vibration can have such a real toning effect on my nervous system.
So how do you use the fork, Jess?
So I'll activate it, and then if I'm having like a fight, flight, freeze response, so I know my body is kind of in a trauma state, I'll take the beginning tuning fork and tune from the belly button, and active, like, have that vibration right on that core center of the tummy, because we remember at the beginning from a neural natal perspective, that's kind of like when we first really, like, I would say,
Okay.
this is, you know what I mean, like in terms of life and
Okay.
perhaps theoretically the consciousness. So, and go through the rest of the sequence, and it just completely tones my body spirit
So what's the
down.
frequency of the tuning fork?
Oh, exactly to the Fibonacci sequence.
Okay.
So we
Yeah, I
start
don't
off
know.
at
So is
1
there a
1.
series of forks that are tuned to the ratio
Yes,
of the Fibonacci sequence? So is it the first?
exactly.
Sorry.
Yes, you are correct. So you have the first one is 1 1, and then
Okay.
the second one is 2 1s,
Okay.
or
So
and
yeah,
then so
right.
on.
It's two. So it's twice the frequency of the first.
Yeah, and then 3/2s,
Okay.
5/3s, all those exact, as we talked about, those sequence. And then 8/5, 13/8.
And then do you use a bunch of them or just one?
Depends on where I'm at with my nervous system.
Okay. Interesting.
So if I understand you correctly, you are balancing your autonomic nervous system with your tuning forks and a vibroacoustic bed together.
No, I've never actually tried the vibroacoustic
No, just
bed.
tuning forks
Actually, and I
With
lay
tuning forks.
and breathing.
breathing
breathing.
technique. Yes, and I'll lay down on the what is this exactly called? It's I'll just turn on my camera because I can't remember what these are called. Oops. Here we go.
Yes.
The mats. Hi. I have a whole mat of these. This is just the pillow, and I'll lay down on this. I don't know what they're called. They're like
So you lay down on the mat, do some breathing exercises,
Yeah.
and use
What
a
is,
tuning
what
fork.
is that map? What does it deliver?
Oh, it's like it's like acupressure versus acupuncture. That's what I'm trying to.
Acupressure mat.
Yes.
Oh, that's a nice synergy. Acupressure, breathing, and tuning forks.
Cool. Thank you. It's been working, life is stressful sometimes. Gotta
But it
work
goes
that out.
back to, I mean, every auditory brain, every brain is different. And based on the life set of experiences of that person, your formula is good for you. So we can educate on a toolkit of formulas, but each person has to select their formula, which is why I'm so excited about creating a diagnostic possibility for sound binaural beats, a toolkit of brain hacks that a person could put together, or perhaps have sophisticated biomarkers help them diagnose, like a prescription.
That'd be really cool and helpful for a lot of practitioners to help many people across this planet.
All right. Thank you, Jess. And thank you, Elizabeth.
Jess. Thank you.
I think we can finish here. That was awesome. Enjoyed it. Let's continue our conversation and do some of the studies we mentioned.
I look forward to it, Sanjay. I knew I was going to learn a bunch of stuff today. Thanks so much for having me. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to be in your space.
Thank you. Just stay on.